Hi everyone, welcome back to Digital Hustle Career Pathway 101. We are so excited to have you with us again as we continue exploring the career, skills, and real world challenges shaping today's digital economy. I'm Shamima Raihan Manzoor, and as always, I have got my amazing co host Shahida right here with me.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. And today's episode is one of those conversations that feels urgent, relevant, and sometimes impossible to ignore. Our episode today is titled Brands Under Fire in the Digital Spotlight. And we're diving into what happens when brands are tested publicly online, instantly, and at a scale.
In the digital age, the distance between a successful brand and a total reputational collapse is shorter than ever. According to Bradley Akuburio from the Forbes Communications Council, a single viral accusation, true or not, can wipe out years of brand equity in hours. And unfortunately, we have seen this play out in real life.
One major food and beverage brand was hit by a viral social media post falsely claiming they had reported undocumented workers to authorities. Even though fact checkers later debunked their story, the viral moment had already taken over, leading to a devastating nine-figure drop in sales.
Akuburo compares crisis preparedness to smoke detectors. No one thinks about them until the fire starts, and by then it's too late to install them. That idea really frames today's episode.
In today's interconnected digital landscape, crisis no longer unfolds slowly or quietly. Platforms like X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and online news outlets can turn a minor issue or a misstatement into a global controversy within minutes.
And unlike the era of controlled press releases and traditional media, organizations now face instant public reactions and real time scrutiny. As highlighted by the World Communication Forum Association in Crisis Communication in the Digital Age, managing reputation today requires speed, transparency, and the ability to respond effectively in real time.
And to help us unpack what effective crisis communication really looks like in practice, we're thrilled to welcome today's guest.
Joining us on Digital Hustle for this episode is Maryam Danagege, a public relations and communications professional with over a decade of experience across the UAE and Canada.
Maryam is the founder of Hustle House PR and Media.
Maryam, we are so excited to have you with us today. Welcome to Digital Hustle.
Hi, Shamima and Shahida. Thank you very much for having me. It's such a great pleasure to be part of the show today and to share my insights onto the topic that you're talking about.
Perfect. To start us off, can you walk us through your journey from your early days in PR and media communications to your current role as the founder of Hustle House PR and Media?
Sure thing. I always say that I came across PR by accident. So I had a friend of mine, and at that time, I was a very new mom at that time. I was doing like a lot of translation services, a little bit of marketing things here and there. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to have an interesting job?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. What is it about?" He was like, "It's something you'd really love. It's all about like celebrity gossip, exciting things, events, fashion shows, news." I was like, "You know what? Put me in." So he was like, okay. So he started an agency then, and he was looking for someone to support him with PR. He was like, in reality, you could just learn on the job. And it's because it was in UAE, I was able to get into it because I could speak both in English and Arabic. So that was an advantage for me at that time. So I was like, you know what? Put me in. I would love to do the job. And funny enough, I just started learning on the job. He was a great writer. Right now, he's owner of a magazine. So he's a great writer. He taught me how to write press releases, taught me how to communicate with the media, the right note to use with them, how to respond with them, what is coverage, what is not. So in reality, he just taught me the one-on-one of PR, and that was on the job. And that's almost about 10 years ago. And that's how I started my PR journey. A couple of years into it, when I learned the ropes, not really nice to say, but I felt like, okay, maybe this is my time to grow and move on. So I started changing into different agencies. I've worked with a couple of agencies in the UAE, and these agencies usually work with multinational clients, such as Pepsi. You have government clients, Dubai World Trade Center. We did a lot of lifestyle, restaurants, Sofitel hotels, you name it. Any industry you can think about working with an agency, I've done it. So that's how I grew in my career for a while, starting from a PR executive to growing all the way to where I am right now. And then finally, almost 2 years ago, I decided to make the move into Canada. And of course, being a PR junkie, I was like, I need to get right into it. And with time, I started Hustle House PR here in Canada. And that's because I saw like a little bit of a niche in the market. Not that there are no PR agencies, there are, but ours is more specific to being more cultural, more direct to what the brand is looking for. Yes, Canada as a whole is Canada, but then, you have different people that make up Canada and different cultures. There are different times and different ways to communicate with them. You have the Arabs, you have the Africans, you have the Muslims. Everybody is different. So the way you communicate with everyone is different. We all celebrate things differently. So you cannot sell the same thing to us the way you'd sell it to everybody. I mean, the different cultures that you have. So that's how I was like, I think maybe I could do something that's slightly different. And that's how Hustle House PR and Media came into being. So we do public relations for startups, thought leaders, wherever you are in your journey. And then we do influencer marketing as well. If you need influencers to hype up your brand, then we do that for them. So that's like a little bit of my PR journey in a nutshell.
That actually sounds very exciting, although unplanned, but it seems like a very exciting journey. My question would be related to that, Mariam. So you have mentioned that you have worked across both UAE and Canada.
Correct.
How do you think that these two different cultural environments shaped your approach to crisis communications?
So for example, in the UAE, communication is easy, but not really that easy. I don't like to say the narrative is controlled, but it's almost controlled. You cannot really just say anything or maybe say something without really, taking it to the stakeholders. Let's say it's even a government entity, then that's even, the approval process is really long and difficult. And it's less transparent than here. Of course, moving here, I saw it was completely different. Things are transparent. Everybody could share his opinion. Negative media is also there. Over there, let's say in the UAE, we try to eliminate as much negative media sentiments as possible. But over here, everything is welcome. People are okay to like oppose whatever was said and all that. Yes, over there it's a bit more controlled. Over here it's more of, it goes with the flow.
So, with that, Mariam, I would like to say that when it comes to like working in Canada, you can see there are a lot of flexibility in terms of sharing opinion. But don't you think it also increased the risk of, in the media? How do you
Yes.
find the challenges and how to deal with the
Yes.
challenges?
Yes, definitely. Over here, because everybody is more opinionated, you're allowed to say things. Over here, the chances of crisis communications or some crisis escalating is even higher and more quicker than where it is, for example, let's say in the Middle East or in the UAE. Because again, over here, one social media tweet or post could just change the whole narrative within a second. And this is not a place where you would say, oh, by the way, all those things you heard, you cannot talk about them. You need to pull them. So the readiness for a crisis over here and the expectations over here on this side, it's merely higher than where it's going to be in the Middle East, where, it's a bit of a controlled scenario. Everybody will think into things immediately before even if, let's say, the media starts talking about something, if it's not something that needs to be discussed about, there are opportunities where you could actually take down the information or stop them just from talking about it and change the narrative completely.
Absolutely. So, what do you to freelancers PR work alongside in-house roles, and how does managing reputation differs between the two?
So with freelance, the reason why I chose freelance, it's because the number of industries that I worked with. Sometimes I feel like maybe sticking to one industry, maybe I'm not being very fair to myself, because I can really work in hospitality. I can still do lifestyle. I can still do fashion. So I feel like with that I have in my pocket, it's easier easier for me to freelance, which means I could be different beats in just one person. That's like hitting so many birds with one stone. Of course, when you're working in-house with a particular brand or a particular company, then the whole narrative, the focus is just about the brand and how, the brand is perceived into the public. And with these, for example, working in-house, usually whether there's a crisis comms or not, you always have your crisis comms plan ready. That's the difference between a PR freelancer and an in-house. Now, as a freelancer, I don't really owe it to you to say, okay, let's have a PR crisis comms plan, because again, that's maybe not part of my job. Maybe you hired me for a specific thing. Maybe it could be media relations. It could be organizing an event for you where you want some media. So again, my top priority would not be telling you what to do in terms of your crisis. But with the place where you're working in-house, part of the deck that you're supposed to have as a PR professional is to have your crisis comms ready. This is in case anything happens. Before you even go to the public, you should always have a ready-made media statement, because the first thing that you need to do in a crisis is respond to the people. Listen to what the questions are, respond to it, and then come back later. So that means you've shown people that you're listening to what they're saying, you understand what they're going through, you acknowledge it, and you're coming back to get back to them with, a bigger response. But the first holding statement should be there. This is usually identified by the major stakeholders that are within the company and the spokespeople. There is always a spokespeople that's already identified who's going to be the face of that crisis comms that everybody is going through. So there is already a media briefing, media training that goes on internally. Now, these are all with internal comms. As a freelancer, since I'm not really committed to any particular company, I wouldn't know what they have. But in times of crisis, they need my support. I would definitely guide them into what they need to do. And then I'll be the one to probably, if there is any media statement or any media release, then I would distribute that immediately once, all that is ready.
So for the in-house role, you mean that there should be some kind of contingency plan always need
Yes.
to be in mind.
Yes. There should always be something ready. Standard media statement that's always ready. And of course, your plan of action. Okay, in case there is a media crisis, what's the first thing that we're going to do? Who are the first people that we need to address? Which media do we need to communicate with that, would talk about this? What's our method of responding to the public? All these things should be ready beforehand.
Totally agreed.
And this kind of dives into the next question that I
Yes.
am about to ask you, Maryam. So you were talking about a lot of things you would do or you do as an in-house personnel. So my follow-up question to that would be, in today's fast-paced digital world, what are the key elements of managing a crisis effectively in real time, in your opinion?
Of course, I feel like to manage a crisis, the key elements is, of course, the first and foremost thing is how you respond to people. Second thing is always look for the change or shift in narrative. Like, how would you know there is a crisis? Maybe right now, with the way the world has changed digitally, you definitely first see it or hear it in social media. And it goes viral before you say Jack Robinson. Everything is, So you always have your media monitoring tools ready. And that's why we have the sentiment part where it shows or it tells you, okay, there is some negative news happening about you. There is positive news happening about you. So these are all things to have and to watch. And of course, if maybe you've already gone against something and you're expecting this crisis, because usually the first response is, apart from social media, second part would always be maybe journalists calling you or sending you emails with queries or more questions. So you definitely know there is something going on. So of course, the first thing is all those social media listening tools, media monitoring tools. And secondly is all your other softwares, how people communicate with you, the kind of questions they ask you. You definitely know that something is wrong.
So how do you monitor digital channels for early warning signs of reputational risk?
Yes. So right now, with the way we have the world really advanced, the first thing is you will check the shift in tone. Like I said earlier, the way the tone shifts about that brand, the way you hear different people giving their opinions about the brand. You check if there is any trending hashtag, because right now everything is just hashtag trendy. What are the hashtags saying? Again, you also go back to those media monitoring softwares where you'll see the sentiment or the type of news that's being conveyed there. So in this fast-paced world, everything is digital right now, and it's all those softwares that helps you identify what's going on or what's happening with the brand.
We always need an example to understand things, right? So, real life examples. Talking about the crisis, can you share an example of a time you had to respond quickly to a PR crisis? And would you also please share your strategies that you used in that moment?
Yes. So I remember in the UAE, we were working with a big brand, new mall that was supposed to be opened in Abu Dhabi. So at that time, of course, we were doing their PR ever since, like even from the part where they're still building the mall, not even the mall being complete. Throughout the construction and everything, we were engaged as their PR agency. And it's usually, to talk about their updates, how far they're going with opening the mall. And then if there is any crisis that would happen during that period where they're building that mall. And to our luck, I would say, because right now I could use it as an example, something went wrong. So all the construction workers that were the ones in building that mall, they were all fired. One fine morning, the whole company was fired.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue, everybody, all the construction workers, I'm sorry to say, they're also referred to as the labor workers. Everybody was fired, and this was like thousands and thousands of them. Now, the night before, they all came to work and they all left work like we all have work tomorrow. By the time they came back to work the next morning, of course, they all resume as early as 7 a.m. The gates were closed. So they had no place they couldn't even have access to the building. So you can imagine that means they were even starting to understand what was going on then. They didn't know that internally between the stakeholders, that company has been fired. The company that's in charge of all those workers were fired. Now, again, the Middle East is a very, very hot country. Now, imagine that there is a gate, so that means they cannot go to their place of work. And then that means everybody will be standing out there in the sun because it's really hot. Now, we were informed about this very, very early in the morning. Thankfully, of course, when this brand came on board with us, there was already a communications plan that was done for them. The only thing that we kept on doing was that we quickly worked on an internal media statement to address those people that were outside. Because the first people that we need to now take care of are the people that are standing outside that building. It's no longer the media at this point, because these are the people that would start changing the shift or the sentiment of that brand. It could just be one video from one of the workers and then everything would go viral. So what happened immediately was they came quickly, addressed those people in public, telling them what is going on internally between the stakeholders. And then because everything happens really fast over there, a quick tent was built for them, a big one, so that they could all go inside and they could stay within the shade. And of course, they were given maybe food, water, just to keep them, while more information kept on coming up. Now, we from our side, the media agency, what we kept on doing was that we did not say anything, but we already had a media statement ready. So we just kept on monitoring using all those social media and, media monitoring tools. We kept on monitoring the sentiment or keeping an eye to see if there is any negative comment or if there is any article with regards to what was going on in front of that mall at that time. We kept on doing this till all those people were addressed. They already understood what was going on. The ones that needed to be compensated were compensated, and then they went back home. So we were all on standby till the whole process was over, which took the whole day, of course, to do. But then luckily for us, no negative comment came from it because, again, before the people that would communicate what's going on to the public, before, they started getting frustrated, we already addressed them. They already told what was going on. They already understood, and they could see how everybody cared for them. Because even though all this thing happened last minute, by the time they came to their place of work and realized that they were not able to go inside, some other measures were already taking place for them, so they could see that something was happening. But from our side, internally, what was going on was we were just monitoring and seeing if there was any trend that was going to pop up. Now, later after that time, since, of course, we had that 24 hours where nothing was happening, that means it was said that everything is safe. And that's when we did a whole press release stating that they now have a new contractor that would be working with them and the other one has gone. So that's how that was managed at that time.
It really seems like something out of a movie.
Yes. And that was my first experience, which was amazing. I mean, not to say amazing, of course, but then was there like firsthand from sleeping at home, thinking that tomorrow was just a normal day,
Mhm.
all of a sudden having, all this full blast and all that.
I would still say the way you explain it, it was managed pretty well. And I congratulate you on that,
Thank
really.
you. Thank you very much.
How has social media fundamentally changed the way brands handle crisis compared to traditional PR methods?
Yes, I love this question, and this is because, again, I don't know if I can say it, but I would say it. It's regarding the Puff Daddy case. Don't know. Yes, I don't know if anyone has seen the Netflix documentary about PDD and all the allegations that were against him. You could tell that up until towards the end. He's guilty. He already knows
Mhm.
that he was guilty. He was already taken to trial. People have already stood up, spoken. They've gathered a lot of evidence. Me, as the viewer, I was already crying for all those people that were victims and all that. But then you could see how when he started going to court,
Mhm.
everything changed. The
Exactly.
whole narrative changed. I don't like saying it, but that's like amazing and excellent PR work. Because from him being guilty to him just walking free on the streets, and you have all the evidence. And what did they use? They even spoke about the tactics they used over there. They actually
Mhm.
used influencers. They used influencers that were, everybody had their own opinion. Early in the morning, those influencers would probably receive certain emails about scripts. They normally convey something different than what was happening inside the court. They changed the narrative. PDD's closest person that he was involved with was now also seen as guilty because she was seen as an associate to, okay, why didn't you speak this whole time? Even though you can
Mhm.
clearly see that it's something is wrong, something happened, justice hasn't been served at this. But the influencers, the social media, they changed the whole narrative because at some point they were only talking about their opinions and how they felt about that person, rather than actually talk about really what's going on. It's more about, oh, how nice this person is. Oh, look at how nice they were as a couple. Oh, this could have been done. This could have been done. They were narrating something that was not really happening at court. And then the whole world's sentiment completely just changed. All of a sudden, everybody was on his side and the world was against everybody else. And that's the power of social media. Just a couple of influencers who just changed the narrative. And right now he's walking guilt-free on the streets.
It's very interesting. And my next question actually ties into that.
Yeah.
So, we are talking about journalists and influencers and also media outlets
Yeah.
having that power to control the narrative, right? So, during crisis, how do you maintain trust with journalists and influencers and media outlets?
So usually, again, a lot of journalists and I noticed this here in North America, to be precise. It's very hard for you to tell them to maybe take out what they've written, because I've worked with a company, and we had a situation where news was published. It wasn't really negative, but it wasn't really approved, or it wasn't quoted correctly. And we spoke to the journalists saying that, oh, this is not what we agreed for. And of course, the journalists, to protect their dignity, they said that they will not take it down because we have shared the information. So now journalists, they believe that whatever we share with them is correct. How they frame it at the end of the day is, it's not something you could agree on. So the best thing is, of course, if you have any relationship with a journalist, maybe you could be honest and transparent about the situation. And then with that, now they will use their own empathy and see that, okay, let me do it this way or not. Otherwise, it's very hard once you give your messaging out there to even say, maybe change it or something like that. It's even easier with influencers sometimes because you can tell them what narrative you want and they could run with it. With journalists, it's a bit difficult. So you really have to be transparent and be honest with what is going on rather than sugarcoat things and give it to journalists. Because if you sugarcoat it, then they're going to even spin it to something that's more suitable to their narratives. And then maybe it's even completely different than what you said.
Yeah, totally agreed. How do you brief internal teams to ensure consistent messaging when a brand is under intense public scrutiny?
The first thing is, once the matter is addressed publicly and it's being solved publicly, of course, the second people that we need to turn into are the internal employees, especially if it's going to affect them. Again, a lot of these things happen via town hall meetings, all those emergency meetings. They get emails, they're being briefed on what's going on, because even as a company, transparency is key. The employees are part of the company. In fact, they are the ones that make up the company. So they need to know that their jobs are there, they're safe, everything is all right. So we do speak with them through internal channels or through face-to-face meetings, especially if it's some place where everybody is in office. Then we prioritize communicating with them first, informing them. If there's any intranet, we tell them via newsletters and any other methods of communications that we have for the employees internally.
We have been talking a little bit about real life cases, big cases like the PDD case you just mentioned, Mariam. So, to my understanding, it felt like that storytelling had a lot to do with the shift of narrative. So, my follow up question to that would be, what roles do you think storytelling play in transforming a potential PR disaster into a reputational opportunity?
Yeah. So again, PR, public relations, communications, you name it, it's all about storytelling. And that's why, again, they say that as a PR person, you should be really great with your pitch, because you might be having a pen to sell, but how you speak to the journalist is what would determine him to pick up a story about that pen and write about it like his life depends on it. And it's all in the power of how you tell your story. Every brand has a story. That's why you'll have the stories where, oh, I started from nowhere. Oh, I started from the streets. Oh, I started from the pain that I've received and everything. So storytelling is really what shapes everything. Even as a writer, when you're reading something, it's the way the story is being told that you're hooked to it, and you could even imagine the whole story just by reading. So storytelling, of course, is key to everything. How you narrate and how you say it is really what sticks into people's head, and this is what they remember. And that's why I was saying, in the case of PDD, what people did, or what the influencer did, was they now started showing both of these two people in a positive light. For example, maybe they will post their pictures when things were good and both of them are laughing or in a good place at that time in their lives. Oh, look at how cute their relationship was. This is relationship goals. Like, they turned something completely into more of an emotional thing. And storytelling, a lot has to do with touching of people's emotions. If you really want to sell something, then you need to have emotions into it. And in that case, they used love, they used empathy, and all those things, and they touched into what people identify and can relate with the most. And that's how the narrative was changed completely.
So, are there specific digital tools or platforms you rely on to manage real time communications and track public sentiment?
Yeah, so let's say over here, I'm really good with Meltwater. Meltwater is like everything in one. You could monitor media mentions, media sentiment. You could also use it, again, to monitor anything that's happening in social media. Another platform I was really good with when I was in the UAE was called Karma. That was also good. You could see what's going on. You could see all the information. You could even see all the sentiment that's happening, how many times that topic has been mentioned, and in what frequency and at what time. So these were tools I'm always using and I'm always aware of when it comes to these kind of things.
One information might be useful for our listeners, that whether these tools are free or there should be any subscriptions, monthly or any kind of premium version or something you would like to share.
Yeah, so these tools are actually not free, and it's always ideal or advised for a media agency or a company where they have in-house communication, or sometimes a freelancer, to always have them. Because again, apart from getting all the information that you want about your brand, you can also have information into journalists, where they work, the type of industry they work with, and that's a good way to also have an introduction to them. So all those platforms are usually, they all come at a yearly cost or a 6 months cost at least.
All right, that's very informative.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maria. So now we're moving a little bit towards the aspiring PR professionals who want to
Yeah.
get into the profession and learn a little bit more from a seasoned professional. So for those PR professionals, what core skills do you think are essential to succeed in crisis management roles today?
I think first and foremost, it's to be curious. Curiosity is really something that helps in PR. Second thing is to be like a chameleon. You can adapt to any situation. Third thing is to have some form of thick skin, because speaking with journalists, it's really not that easy. We PR people, it's like there is this low-key war happening between PR people and journalists. We don't like each other, but we like each other because we need each other to make our money, to do our jobs. They need us, we need them. So yes, it's also to have thick skin, because you might send an email, like, honestly, I could even say maybe 50 times to one journalist and he would never respond. And to be honest, this is not because they hate us, but maybe because the news is not even interesting for them. Your angle is not even strong for them. So even to tell you, no, I don't need, that's like a waste of their time. So they'll just leave you over there on red. And then another thing that I would always say, if you're really starting up and just getting into the career, I would always say work with agencies. Why would I say work with agencies at first? Because you'll get exposure into so many different industries. You could do tech, hospitality, fashion, lifestyle, oil and gas, government, corporate, you name it. And it's always best when you have it, and that increases your portfolio till you reach to a point where you feel like, okay, this is one industry that I would really like to focus on. And then you could jump into that industry and become an in-house communication specialist. But it's always nice and fun to work with an agency. And that way you could have exposure to so many brands. You could be at so many events. Like, you would enjoy the real PR. Not that in-house is not, but I mean the fun side of PR, before really finally understanding and identifying what works best for you and jumping right into it.
How do you balance creative ideation with strategic thinking in high pressure situations?
Again, PR professionals, they fall in the creatives. For us as a PR professional, once you're telling me the story, I'm already imagining different campaigns and strategies for you in my head. And then sometimes maybe I've already worked with a similar brand and I know what works for you. So I already have a buffer and I could throw in ideas. For us, the creativity also comes at that time. And always keep yourself informed and aware of what's going on around. Back in some places where I worked, every week we do research of campaigns that, happened maybe all around the world that people are talking about. And that really helps, that really helps you understand, okay, if I do like this might work. So the creativity just comes out there. Again, being curious really, really helps. Again, it keeps you aware of what's going on around you and all that.
Perfect. So, Mariam, looking back at your kind of long, let's say long professional journey in PR, right? What lessons about reputation management do you wish you had learned earlier in your career?
Honestly, I think if, let's say, there was a focus in PR, I would have specialized in maybe crisis management, because, like, there is, yes, companies have their crisis plans, but to be specialized in that would really be a plus. Now, this is because the things that are currently trending right now all around the world are things that are prone to crisis management. For example, you have AI. There is this whole wave of AI right now coming out, and you hear that, ooh, someone used AI and AI told him to do something, and, that person did it, and then something negative really happened. Now, that's a crisis for that AI company, of course. And right now, with the way everybody is really dependent on AI, you could tell that a lot of things are going to still come up later in the future, and that's something. The second part is technology. See the way the world is changing. Tech. With tech, of course, you're really prone to a lot of crisis that's happening. Another one is all those cryptocurrency, digital currency. With digital currency, there's a lot of crisis happening and everybody is falling for something one way or the other. And then you'll hear something happening 6 months down the line. So with the growing industry, you could tell that there is a lot of, what do you call it, in crisis management. That's a niche out there, and that's something to specialize on, because wow, what if everybody just comes to me for a crisis? I actually worked in the UAE with a brand just earlier this year. It's called the Drill. What they do, they now build a crisis simulation software. And they did it for different, they did it for different
That is
industries.
actually very interesting.
Yes.
Mm, yeah.
Yes, they did it for different industries, oil and gas, healthcare, all those sensitive sensitive industries. It's developed for that. So it's something that you don't need really a human being to do it for you. There is a whole automation going on and so forth. So the world is really also changing slowly, and looking at crisis comms not just as a plan, but as a whole sector on its own. Something to really look into.
So, before we wrap up, what advice would you give young professionals who want to build credibility, resilience, and confidence in handling public crisis?
I think the first thing is, first of all, believe in yourself, be confident, be sure of what you're saying. That's very important. Before you go out with anything, because it's already a very threatening situation, confirm with all stakeholders and everybody that this message is good to go. Once you get your final approval, then you could proceed and face the media. And I will always bring it back to have thick skin because, again, you don't know the kind of negative comments you may have. Don't panic because, again, with media questions, there's a lot of panicking, especially if it's something that's maybe on camera or on voice recording or on the phone. So, yeah, these are, I feel like, essential starter kits for somebody that wants to excel in that crisis comms part.
Awesome. Mariam, thank you so much for sharing such practical and actionable insights today.
No
I know
problem.
our listeners, whether they're students, early career PR professionals, or anyone managing a brand, are walking away feeling more confident about handling crisis and protecting their reputation in real time.
Yes. Thank you very much, really. This was I'm really glad I was a part of this show. There's so many things to say, of course, when it comes to PR and then crisis comms. And I really hope some of the few things that I said would be useful to people that are trying to get into the industry or maybe not know what to do at times of crisis.
Absolutely. I believe, Mariam, the tips that you shared on monitoring digital channels, maintaining trust, and responding quickly are lessons our audience can start applying right away. We really appreciate you taking the time to break it down for us.
Thank you very much.
And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning into Digital Hustle. Remember, in the digital world, reputation can be built or challenged at lightning speed. Stay prepared, stay proactive, and don't forget to join us next time for more career insights and real world strategies.
Until then, keep hustling, keep learning, and keep chasing those digital dreams.